never take this moment for granted again after COVID. And I'm going to use that catchphrase to wake you up every time. So cool, 10th edition. Mind-blowing. We're going to talk about the main theme for today, embracing data and AI. And I'm going to do what I always do, try to put the theme into pictures or a talk. So embracing data and AI from new to normal. You saw the intro movie. It's scary. We need to have hype. We need to have the invention. But at the same time, if we want to get it out in our organizations, to the engineers, to the operations, or to society, we also need to think carefully how we do it. So I'm going to propose a way to look at this with embrace in mind. In order to embrace data and AI, we have to have adoption in focus, not invention in focus. So we need hype, we need invention, but we can't have it in focus to succeed. We need to go the other way around. We need to go from value, understanding who should adopt things. Then we can get the tech in. So what we're going to talk about is this loop when it goes clockwise instead of anti-clockwise. So I see sometimes, oh, we can't start with AI, we need to start in the value. And then I see people starting in the value, but they still go anti-clockwise. Value down to how can we reduce friction, how should we work, then what data and AI. So we need the tech to understand what can be done, but we need to think about the practical. So for 2 days, we're going to talk about embracing data and AI, and we're going to start with talking about it from the core idea of new to normal. And tomorrow we're going to talk about from friction to flow. So with adoption in focus, let's put that in a context. I have a funny little example for you. Let's talk about adoption with an example of the first rotary chainsaw. This is in the 1830s. It is a fantastic thing. It's usable when you want to cut bone, useful for surgeons, but it was never adoptable in medical practice. It couldn't practically be used. It planted a seed, however. The tech was there, the invention was starting to seed, but it was not until a century later when we have Andreas Steele who built the powered chainsaw. But he put it in a different domain. We used it for felling timber. And still, when that came out, it was still another 30 years until this was normalized by the loggers and worthy of the title innovation. So this is been described, diffusion of innovations, Everett Rogers, 1962, and then many others has come based on this work. So let's start with this. Diffusion of innovations. Rogers has a quite quirky meaning in there. He talks about innovation as an idea, and then he says subject to reinvention during adoption. So what he's really talking about is adopter agency. He's talking about the adopter has to then take whatever is the new invention and do something with it. And he has to choose to do that. So a new doing earns the title of innovation once the majority adopts it as normal practice. So we talked before about adoption as the quantum of innovation. I'm stepping it one step further because we are not getting it. We are looking at the tech too long. We have the tech, we know the invention, we got the hype. Now we need to really go the other way. The problem we have when we look at this word, diffusion of innovations, it looks like innovations as a systemic abstraction, as something that sort of moves of itself. But in reality, it's a way to describe an agentic reality, a reality where we as people have agency. We are agents. So we need to look at the people. Who are these people? Who are these agents? Who are the innovators? Who are the early adopters, etc.? We need to put our focus here. Adopters cause innovation. Adopters cause innovation, not the tech. So if I now flip the wordings because I want to have an adoption-centric semantics, I want to have an agentic semantic, then I would not talk about diffusion of innovations, I would talk about a cascade of adoptions. All the small things we need to do over time as we grow and as it gets normalized. I would talk about rate of adoption events. We could then look at the innovators, early adopters, early majority in another way. We could think about them, these are the validators. This is the early adopters, this is the innovators. I'm validating my market product fit. These are the onboarders. This is when we cultivate and start understanding how this will really work at scale. Normalize. This is when we are trying to get this to the masses. This way of thinking works if you're lovable as an AI startup and you want to understand who is going to be my first that really goes to GitLab and downloads this in the Git repository, who's going to use it more and more and more. Or we can talk about this in the same way inside our organizations. So what we've done now, we have looked a little bit about the research and different papers, different topics in order to find a definition for embrace. So we're saying we need to embrace data and AI. Well, can I have a definition on this, please? Well, this is my attempt. The embrace and inflection point is when we take something from new doing, this is new to us, to normal practice. And then we get a very, very important equation. Invention times adoption is innovation. If you take a hard look in the mirror at your projects, the way we go about things, the way we talk about, oh, I see this vision for the new architecture we need to have. It needs to be modular, this and that. You need to take that and flip that into who will adopt what. So here, the key metric, the key heuristic, adopters are the agents of change. We need to create pull with these guys. The blind spot that we get wrong sometimes, adopters are adopting new doings, new ways of doing things. They are not actually adopting the product. They're adopting the usage of the doing out of the product. If I take Spotify, we went to streaming music because we wanted to adopt a new way of doing music. And the anti-pattern here, like what we get it wrong, is that we are looking too much at the tech, at the product. We need to be product-centric. We say yes, 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 but it's to be adoptable. This is about pull versus push. When Everett Rogers wrote his book, we were in the 60s. The age of the madman advertisers, mass marketing. You know, it's easy to sell a fridge when you have ice at home to show the product. You can have a fridge instead of ice. In 2025, we need to think much more pull inside our companies, in society. So now, the key question then that I want to sort of look at, if we say from new to normal and it embraces the inflection point, how can we now dissect this to the core quanta, the patterns, so we really start building our projects, our organization, our investments based on the right idea. If we put the invention idea too far, we're going to organize the projects and investments with the wrong angle. So we're going to use Schumpeter's shift. One of the basic ideas to understand the innovation pattern is the word, the doing of new things, or the doing of things already been done in a new way. That's the real invention. So we're going from the possible to the practical in focus, the doing of new things. And if I go deeper into this single sentence, we can break down this pattern into 3 doings and 2 things. It's the new doing in the middle. Something is the new doing. The new doing is the job to be done. That's the thingy. We have something that we can do smarter, better. That's the job to be done. And ultimately, we need to normalize that. So the new doing is about investing the effort to get jobs done easier, faster, better. So if we want to do it in a new way, we need to figure that out. And then normalizing is really turning this new doing of jobs into the normal practice. So a new doing without normalization, when it doesn't spread as the normal way, that's the prototype graveyard. And in these contexts, if you're working in the tech, in the platform with the data and the AI, we are here to try to boost the new doing. So the data and AI is the boost, the product to be employed for people to do work in different ways. So with this, we have now looked at an entity map. We have now looked at the parts of it, the new doing, the normalization, the boosting. it's a job to be done, and it's to boost the product to be employed. But how do you look at that when you take that over a sequence? How do you take that into a process? How do you build phases that orbits around new doing? So if I start, this is the topic, right? The new doing always starts by business as usual and trying to find a better way of doing something, and you get a value proposition. We could do this instead. Then you want to excite people. We should try this. We need to do something to try this. Then from here, we need to explore, will that work? It's not about the POC of the tech. It's about exploring how would this new work in normal practice. And if you do that, and you can prove that, then you start iterating. Then you start starting, this is what market fit is really all about. This is what operational fit is really all about. How will this tech now be applied in my normal daily job? And then when we figure that out, we expand it. If we look at the global company, when you're expanding from one market to another, it's more features, it's different data that needs to get in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the product, the boost expands for many reasons. Then you get to value and use at a larger scale. And then the key topic is really to stop doing the old. A lot of times I see in large organizations that we did the new thing, it's a cool thing, but the Excel still lives. The old process still lives. And we have a hard time letting go of that one. So the basic pattern of new to normal. If I now take this picture and I put that as a linear process. So now I'm talking about if new to normal is the thing we should really care about, how will that process look like? How will that practice look like? And it's not rocket science. It's this fundamental view of people, of getting a governance that are people-centric around adoption and commitment to adopt. So if throughout the project we have a crazy idea we want to do agentic AI somewhere, okay, who would adopt it? How will they work? That becomes central, and not only for the actual end user, but all the way through. How will that change the other roles, the data governance roles? How will that change the data engineer role? So when I say taking something from new to normal in this room, let's be honest here. A lot of the tech we're talking about here is not even for the end consumer. It's for people in operations that have more data-oriented jobs. It's for people in IT or in the Chief Data Officer organization that needs to adopt new ways. So when we get a new platform, we get Databricks in, we get whatever in. If we are not working on the practices at the same time, if we are not working on how should we adopt the practice around this, we only have invention. So this story I told on stage here is equally important for the platform engineering, to the enablement, to the value stream teams, all the way out. It's the new to normal mindset that I'm after. And if I lay that out here, this was work we did a couple of years back with Tetra Pak. You can look at this view and you can look at this fundamental topic. What is the time to normal? Time to normal becomes a very interesting metric. So we'll start looking at, we have a Chief Data Officer Center, we have an AI Excellence Center, and we want to take innovation out. We are measuring how fast we can get the tech built. And then we start asking questions, how fast is it to normalization? And we could look at, well, it's quite easy to 10x or 100x how we get this to normal, because the way we are meddling around to get to adoption and normalization is astounding. We are focusing on the tech project. We are not focusing enough on the adoption governance. So to summarize, a couple of one-liners to summarize this whole thing. Invention without adoption is innovation theater, I'm sorry. Time to normal measures the true speed of innovation. Agency makes new doing automatic. We need to understand the agency of the adopters, how it will work in practice. And then with that, we can summarize from new to normal as 3 doings, 2 things, and 4 phases. So new to normal is my first attempt to put the theme on new to normal. So I'm so happy to be here today. It's time to kick off with the very first presentation.